Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. This is the weekly premium video. The topic of this week is we're just going to be doing further price visualization. Specifically, we're going to be focusing on the Bitcoin price, the Ethereum price, the Bitcoin dominance, and the Ether Bitcoin valuation. Okay, and then after we go through that, we're going to go look at the risk levels. Then we're going to take a tour of the various cryptocurrencies that we follow. All right, leave a note down below if you have any questions, and I will try to get to those. So, we've talked about the dominance going up in Q4 for Bitcoin. And remember, nothing moves up monotonically, right? Nothing moves up monotonically except for maybe Bitcoin in Q4 of 2020. So if we know that it doesn't move up monotonically, then we have to be on guard for it sometimes coming back down some. And that's what's actually done over the last week. This chart gives a nice visualization going all the way back to 2014 of what the Bitcoin dominance looks like and how it has moved, okay, how it has moved over the years and what specifically it has done in Q4. All right, so early on, as we know, it didn't really do a whole lot because, at this time it was more or less at 100%, right? The Bitcoin dominance was mostly at 100%. You had a few other cryptocurrencies that were doing something, but most people probably just thought they were scams, right? Back then, if you go all the way back to say 2013, there were some really weird coins around back then. I don't know if you guys remember them, like BBQ coin, World coin, Made Safe coin. I just remember so many like scam type coins back then. But anyways, I digress. The Bitcoin dominance back over here was more or less just 100%. Okay, and then we got into this phase in 2017. Now, technically speaking, in 2017, the dominance in Q4 went down, but it only went down at the very end, the very, very end of the quarter. You can see that actually in Q4, we spent most of the time moving up. Okay, we moved all the way up to 70% or so from just about 50. And then at the very end of it, we shot down as altcoins went absolutely crazy. And I'm sure many of you guys were around for that one if you weren't around for the one in 2013. Now, if this is your first rodeo, then welcome to the show. Now, in 2018, the dominance didn't really do anything consequential. Remember, our argument is not always that the dominance has to go up in Q4. It's just that under certain circumstances, we would expect it to go up in Q4. Over here, it didn't really do anything consequential. So here, it more or less just went sideways. It was kind of going up and sideways, but ultimately ended sideways. This one was sort of going down some and sideways, but ultimately we just went sideways. Last year, we went up. And then we've been speculating that at least as we get into Q4 this year that we would go up as well. And again, over the last week or so, it has pulled back some. I would still expect if Bitcoin were to continue to stay into price discovery mode as we go into, say, November and whatnot, that I would still expect the Bitcoin dominance to go up. All right, so keep that in mind. And just for your records, and this is also in the newsletter if you want to go look at the table, you can see what the returns are on Bitcoin's dominance in terms of percent moves every quarter since 2014. So you can take a look at them here. You can see that in 2020, the dominance went up by 20%. In 2021, so far, we're up 6.6%, but of course that's subject to change as we continue to navigate 2021. Right? Note that in 2017 it dropped 20%, as you can see, but first it actually went up significantly before experiencing that drop at the very end of the quarter. One of the things we've said before is that a lot of times Ethereum makes moves against Bitcoin, significant moves in Q1, but there have been a couple times where that move starts in mid-December. All right, and this, there are some good examples of it starting in mid-December. So you have to remember it is possible for that strong move to come as early as, say, 6 weeks from now. Okay, if you just think about fast forward through all of November, the first couple of weeks of December, it is possible for Ethereum to make a significant move in about 6 weeks. But we know that if it doesn't, it's usually saving it up for January. So I also want to just look at the price action of Bitcoin in Q4 over the years. And I'll go ahead and overlay the chart just so you guys can watch it while I'm speaking. Again, in Q4 of this going all the way back, right, all the way back to 2010, we went up. In 2011, we went more or less down and then back up. So this one was a pretty not super consequential. This one wasn't either. This was a parabolic move, ending the blowout, ending the rally, right, ending the entire cycle. Okay, this was also a parabolic move, ending the entire cycle. Now, is it possible? And by the way, this was a parabolic move, but it did not end the cycle. Okay, keep that in mind. This one did not end the cycle. These two did. This one did not even occur in Q4, and the one in Q4 happened way over here, and it continued to go up in Q1 and Q2, and then it came back down. All right. So right now, obviously, we've talked about lengthening cycles and whatnot for a long time. We know already that as measured from the halving, the cycle is lengthened. I would speculate that as measured from the market cycle bottom as well, the cycle will also lengthen, meaning we have at least another 25 days. I would go beyond that and say that I would guess that it'll lengthen beyond 25 days, not just like a week past that level. I imagine it will continue to go on. But again, what we're going to do is we have all these theories. I'm just going to stick to the risk levels, right? No matter what happens, I'll stick to the risk levels. The same thing back in April. It's not like I knew Bitcoin was going to go to 64K back in April, but because it made that move, I took profits. So if Bitcoin, crypto is a lot of if-then statements, right? A lot of computer science logic, sort of. So it's just if this, then that, okay? And you just keep carrying out this logic over and over and over again, all right? So you can see as we go into Q4, so far our price is looking pretty good right after our September drop, all right? And we normally get a shakeout in September. That's actually fairly standard, right? It's fairly standard. You can even go back to last year and see we had a last cycle, and you can see that we had a September shakeout. You can actually go to last year and see that we had a September shakeout, all right? In order to see the September moves, just go all the way, go right before these red lines, right? A September shakeout. They tend to happen over and over and over again, all right? And if you want to look at the returns on the price, you can see that 2018 was brutal. Absolutely brutal. 50% loss in Q1. Q2 was a 7% loss. We gained 3% in Q3. No one got out of bed for that, I can guarantee you. And another 44% loss in Q4. This is a brutal year. It's a brutal year for Bitcoin when it does that. All right. So keep in mind that if we have another local top, which we won't know it's a local top until after the fact, but we can speculate on it being a market cycle top depending on how far it goes, right? If it goes all the way up on our Bitcoin, the beauty of mathematics, that macro level trend line, if it goes all the way up to that, we could speculate that is the market cycle peak. Right now, we're just going to take it 1 week at a time. So Ether Bitcoin's valuation in Q4, okay, you can see that it generally heads down. There are some times where it shoots up at the very end of the quarter. This is a good example in 2018, the end of 2018, but also this was a bear market year. Okay, but generally speaking, it moves down in Q4, right? Down in Q4, down in Q4. Usually it's moving down in Q4. You can see that every year. So this is 2015 minus 31%, minus 61%, minus 23%. 17 or 18, 24, and so far we're minus 1.5%. 2018 was the only year it went up 1%. Note that it did bleed significantly first in 2018 before finally rallying up at the very end of the quarter and then going into the following month. Okay, so typically speaking, the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation does bleed in Q4. And the way I'm doing it right now, again, is I'm accumulating Ethereum significantly. 70% of my weekly DCAs are going to Ethereum. The other 30% right now are going to altcoins. If you wonder why I'm not accumulating Bitcoin, it's because I spent the last 5 months primarily accumulating Bitcoin, and I have my percentage of Bitcoin up to about 75%. I'm pretty happy with that, but I also want to make sure I'm prepared for what comes for Ethereum, and I want to speculate on some altcoins. So therefore, I'm taking 70% to ETH, 30% to alts. If you don't have a good position in Bitcoin, like if you have a really, really small position relative to the rest of your portfolio, you can always buy up to a higher risk level. But because the risk level on Bitcoin right now is about 0.5, I'm just gonna continue to focus on other things, right? I spent 5 months accumulating Bitcoin. I'd rather focus on other things now. Now, if the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation were to bleed in Q4, which again, we don't know that it will, just historically it's done that, okay? But if it does, if it has say like a 20 or 30% bleed in Q4, then by the end of the quarter, it sets up for a fairly attractive Bitcoin to Ethereum trade, especially if you live in a country that does not have long-term or does not have short-term capital gains, or if you don't have taxes on your crypto to crypto trades. So you have to consider that. It's worked out extremely well in the past. If you have to consider taxes, like especially if it's short-term, then you might want to consider whether it's worth making that trade or not. But again, historically, it does tend to work out extremely well, right? It does tend to work out extremely well. So far, the trade's not there. Right? It's just simply not there. I mean, Ethereum's valuation against Bitcoin so far this quarter is down 1.5%. Okay, so this is not an obvious trade to make. And this is why I'm just accumulating Ethereum with USD. I think it would be, almost criminal to accumulate your Ethereum with Bitcoin at this stage, just because I think Bitcoin is set up for a lot of success here. And I think it doesn't make a lot of sense because with Bitcoin, you still get a lot of the upside. Ether Bitcoin still isn't quite keeping up with it, right? It has bled a little bit over the last few weeks. Keep in mind, Ether Bitcoin has not put in a new local high since back in May. All right, so I mean, we speculated back in May that we're likely going to have a summer lull and then it bleeds in Q4. Has it bled as much as I thought it might? No, it hasn't. But at the same time, it's not like it's been putting in new highs against Bitcoin. Therefore, Bitcoin has been just as good out of an investment as Ethereum since then. Because again, Ethereum's mainly just been sort of keeping pace with Bitcoin. It's a bunch of sideways movement up here. Okay, a bunch of sideways movement. Except Bitcoin is lower risk, right? So I would argue that Bitcoin has been a pretty good asset to accumulate. But again, if you've accumulated Ethereum, you're more or less just right there in line with where Bitcoin is in terms of your ROI in the short term. So the trade's not there yet for the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation. Note that historically the trade doesn't come until December, the end of December. We'll see if it comes or not. If it doesn't come, then so be it. That's why I'm accumulating Ethereum right now with USD. All right. Let's go look at the Ethereum price action in Q1 and Q2. Color-coded green. All right. This is 2016. Pretty good year. 2017, pretty good. 2018, it started off good, okay? And then we ushered in the bear market. What we need to keep an eye on, and I've said this before, the Ethereum tsunami usually marks the end, okay? And it marked the end back in May as well, right? When Ethereum goes up like 2x in 2 weeks, after Bitcoin's made its move and it's sort of on Bitcoin's sort of bounce back down, that's usually marks the end. Okay, so what you need to be focused on, this is sort of what you have to be focused on as we go into this, why we don't know that we're going into that phase yet. Of course, we don't. Somewhat deterministic say we are. I would also say that being heavily weighted Bitcoin would protect you against the downside risk if in fact we don't go to 100K over the next, half year or something, right? It still protects you against the downside risk if it doesn't do that, which I think is a pretty good thing. And more or less, we just kick the can down the road because I do think we will ultimately make it there. Remember, do not be deterministic about anything, but if anything you're going to be deterministic on, it should be that Bitcoin trends up with time. So, good year 2016, a good year in 2017, started off good in 2018. We ushered in the bear market. This was about 2x in 2 weeks. 2018 going into early 2019 was good in Q1 and Q2. This was pretty good if you just look at the entry and exit from entering into Q1 and exiting Q2. We did have the March capitulation, okay? But, I mean, still, just measuring it from entry to exit here, pretty good. Pretty good here as well. I'm going to speculate that it's probably going to look pretty good in 2022 as well. Clearly, we don't know if it'll last the entirety of Q1 and Q2, but I would speculate that it will probably trend higher in those months. What would cause us to be wrong about that? Look, if Bitcoin were to go parabolic, immediately and go to like 150K or 200K like that, then the cycle, I mean, it'll be over quicker. All right. So this is why we're saying we have our theories and whatnot, but what's more important is always set your dignity aside with whatever you think's going to happen, and then react to whatever does happen. Again, I had no idea Bitcoin was going to go to 64K back in April, but it did. All right. So whether we see a peak whenever, right? Whether it's 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. Another thing too, this is a serious possibility that I want people to be aware of, okay? Because we could see this happening. We've talked about a double peak cycle. We've been talking about a double peak cycle since December of 2020 when we first saw this sort of first peak forming. We have to consider the possibility, at least, of a triple peak cycle. Now, I'm not saying a triple peak cycle is going to happen. It depends on how high we go, right? I mean, again, if Bitcoin goes to 150 or 200K in a couple of months, it's probably done, right? I don't think the market can sustain those levels or anything close to those levels for very long. So if we go up that high, then we're likely done for a year, to be completely honest. All right. But what if we go up to 100K and then pull back for a few months? You have to consider that we could have a triple peak depending on how high it goes, right? So this is why I think it's more important to just stick to the risk levels no matter what. Depending on how high it goes, we could become a little bit more observant about whether it's a market cycle peak or just another local top. Again, here, this shows you the returns of Ethereum based on quarter. So you can see Q1 and Q2 tend to be pretty good, right? This is 2021, 2022, 2020. 2019, obviously 2018 was bad, 2017 was good, 2016 was good. So hopefully 2022 will also be good. Clearly that will be dependent on how quickly Bitcoin moves. All right, so that wraps up that. Now what we want to do is we want to go take a look at the risk levels. All right, so Bitcoin is still above 0.5 risk. Therefore, I'm putting 70% of my weekly DCA into Ethereum as long as Ethereum stays below 0.5 risk. Currently, that corresponds to as long as it stays below, let's just call it 4,600. All right, because by the time, within a couple days, this is going to be at 4,600. Let's just say if it's below 4,600, it's still below 0.5 risk. So I'm putting 70% of my weekly buys into Ethereum. I would speculate that assuming we go into another leg of the cycle and see Bitcoin sustainably keep all-time highs and we go to 100K, we go to 150K, etc., I would speculate that the current prices are highly likely the next bear market bottom. So mentally think about that, and I said that in a public video recently, but mentally think about that because again, it doesn't sound so bad now, but it will later when I tell you, again, if I say it when it's at 150K, who's going to want to listen to me tell you that Bitcoin's probably going to go back down to $50,000 or $60,000 when it's trading for 180K or something? No one's going to want to hear that. But I'm telling you now, if it happens quickly, then we will likely come back down to these levels in a couple years, okay? In a couple years. And I know that sounds crazy, but the current levels there's a high probability, right, that the current levels will be the building blocks to the next cycle, okay? Right now, we're sort of just moving through them relatively quickly. Bitcoin, is kind of hanging out here. What would cause us to not have to experience that? Well, if the market just matures, right? If the market matures and we don't have these manic moves in the market all the time, right? Like if we just hang out here at 60K for a few weeks, and then maybe later this year we go to 70K for a few weeks, and then next year we go to 80 or 90K for a couple of months, and then maybe in Q3 we're at 130K for. This could help Bitcoin not have to experience the brutality of a year-long bear market. But if history is any indication, market participants are incapable of controlling themselves when it comes to FOMO and fear. So it accentuates what should happen to the upside, and it completely destroys people's hopes and dreams in the bear market by taking the prices much lower than they really should ever go. Okay, so you have to consider that. So it's certainly possible that if we're watching this premium video, let's say in 5 years from now, like if it's 2026 and you're watching this video, man, I really want to know what the price of Bitcoin is. But if it's 2026 and you're watching this video, I would speculate that the current levels will probably visit them again in the future unless we actually spend some time building out the base here. All right, if we actually spend a decent amount of time at these levels, then maybe we don't have to. But if the market cycles play out like they have in the past, which there is a good chance they do, then we might be back at these levels, down the road. Okay, so Ethereum I think is a pretty good buy. Below 0.5 risk. Guys, look, as I've said for Ethereum for a long time, we're just simply in what I would consider to be long reaccumulation, in fact. This is just long reaccumulation, right? And I've been saying this for a long time now. Probably so much that you guys are just getting tired of me saying it. But unfortunately, we do enter phases in the market like this sometimes. And you just sort of have to keep at it, right? And recognize that eventually we likely will come out the other side. It's just going to take us a while to do so, right? It's just going to take us a while to get there. So that's sort of where I see Ethereum. I do think that Ethereum has a very bright future. And the same thing goes for Ethereum as for Bitcoin. If we just hang out at these levels for a while and slowly build higher, then we have a much better chance of not having a catastrophic crash. And maybe, we'll of course always have pullbacks, but the pullback we had this year, a 55% pullback, that's a lot better, and then getting back up to it by the end of the year than a long bear market. Unfortunately, again, the market usually reacts to the FOMO and then drives prices higher than they should go, and therefore they crash pretty hard. So, as I've said before, I don't think this risk band up here is in the cards for Ethereum, but no, I think this one is. This is the market cycle peak risk band, okay? So I'm not saying we have to make it there anytime soon. I'm just saying whenever we do make it there, it's likely that it's the market cycle peak. You might look at these and say, well, I kind of wish it were higher than these levels. Well, look, again, these are dynamic. By the time we reach the 0.8 to 0.9 risk band, they'll probably be higher than that. They will be higher than that because, again, they go up every single week. Okay, so you have to consider that. it is possible we don't even make it to this risk band, which is why I've said before, you should, if you haven't started taking profits by 0.7 risk, you really should, based on historical data. Okay, so these would be the two primary risk bands to take profits if you haven't already taken profits, because there's no guarantee we make it to this risk band. But the argument is, if we just go to this one, maybe we could argue it's just a local top, right, and not a market cycle top. If we go to this one up here, pretty good chance we're looking at a market cycle top. Okay, because it's just, again, it's getting too far ahead, and there's going to be so many sellers that are just up so much on Ethereum at that point. If Ethereum makes it to 20K, there's going to be a lot of people that are up 200x, right? I mean, we had plenty of time to buy Ether at $100. Okay, so if it goes up to 20K, there's going to be a lot of people that are up 200x on Ethereum. And they say large caps can't make you any money, but I mean, you're talking, I mean, if you bought it at $200, you could be up 100x at 20K. Right, so consider the selling pressure that there would be at a $20,000 Ether. But look, if we just slowly go up and we're at these levels, I think that's fine. Maybe we could always have a local top, not a market cycle top. We'll take it 1 week at a time, of course. Some other cryptocurrencies that I think are worth DCing, and I've been DCing, ADA. Look, I think ADA is, I told you guys, I mean, again, like I said back over here, we're likely going to see a pump into the launch of smart contracts. Probably going to pull back after that and consolidate for a while. And this is sort of the region I would look towards to a breakout. Now, one thing to note is there's no guarantee it breaks out in this box. This is just my own speculation. That's where I would imagine it should be able to break out if Bitcoin stays healthy. That's always the caveat, right? If Bitcoin doesn't stay healthy, then all bets are off on altcoins. We know that. But if Bitcoin stays healthy, this is sort of the region I would look for ADA to maybe break out to the upside. I said this months ago, back over here, that it would probably take months for us to generate enough energy, momentum to break back out. That wasn't really necessarily well received. People said, oh no, it's probably going to break out in October. Look, it needs time. We have to prove ourselves. ADA has a lot to prove, believe me. I know, so you don't need to tell me. I know what it has to prove. And as I've said before, Ethereum is a safer play. But with that said, I do think Cardano has a role to play, and the gains in Cardano have just simply been better. They have. Okay, so I know people might not like ADA. Okay, they have their reasons, and I mean, everyone has their own reasons. The gains in ADA have been better so far, but I would still say an Ethereum position should be higher than an ADA position in your portfolio, just because the risk on ADA is higher. But I still have high hopes for ADA. Okay, so let's keep this in mind. Hopefully, we'll break out somewhere between say mid-November and late March, if at some point in that area. So far it's looking pretty good. It looks like we might be on schedule for that. As you can see, ADA hasn't really done anything recently. We have entered that phase again, right? Where why does ADA not do anything? DOT, I'm incredibly bullish on DOT. Okay, in the short term, I'm more bullish on DOT than ADA, but I'm still bullish on both of them for the market cycle. Last year, I was more bullish on ADA than DOT. This year, going into the end of the year and going into 2022, I'm more bullish on DOT than ADA. Look, DOT has underperformed ADA for a while now. And I'm not trying to take anything away from ADA. It's more so saying that just DOT has underperformed for a while, and I'm hoping that it actually overperforms other altcoins for a little bit. Okay, I still think ADA is great. And look, again, ADA has actually outperformed a lot of different cryptocurrencies. Look, it's up 100x. It's just chilling at 100x. For Ethereum to be up 100x, we still need to go up another 2x. ADA's just chilling there, and people are upset about it. ADA's done a lot, okay? It's done a lot over the last couple of years. It'll probably, my guess, it'll probably go up a lot higher than where it is today. But I would speculate in the short term, there's probably, DOT has I have reason to believe DOT will move a little bit more. Look at this chart. This is a really bullish chart, I think. And if you look at this weekly close on DOT that it just had, like if we take this weekly close right here, you can see that we're just closing just below some of the highest weekly closes we've ever had. Okay, so pretty bullish on DOT. Again, if you go look at the DOT ADA valuation, you can see that DOT has been moving up recently. I would expect this trend to continue and for DOT to outperform ADA for a few months, off and on. Still bullish on ADA again, but I still think we need to consolidate for a while before we can ultimately break out. Another one, Matic. I've been accumulating Matic for weeks now. I've been telling you guys about this one. Anything focusing on roll up, becoming roll up centric and whatnot. I think it's great. I think it's going to be the future for Ethereum. I mean, it is the future for Ethereum for sure. A lot of layer ones that aren't focusing on this are going to get left behind, but Ethereum is focusing on it, and I think they're far ahead. Look, Matic is integrating with this stuff, and I think it's a good project, and I've been saying it for a while now. It's at 161. You might say, is that too high? Like, it is up significantly. I'm not going to lie. We know that, but look, everything is. I mean, if you don't buy a crypto that's up 100x, you're basically never buying a crypto. Okay, I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. You go look at Matic risk level, 0.409. I mean, it's almost in the 0.3 to 0.4 risk band. Okay, so I'd say there's a lot of upside potential on Matic. If we go look at the risk bands on Matic to get an idea of maybe what's theoretically possible, let's assume it can make it to 0.7 risk. That's 523. 0.8 risk would be 720. So I still say there's plenty of upside on Matic. Link. Let's go take a look at Link. I'm still holding on to my Link position. All right, I want to be clear. I still have it. It hasn't performed that well recently. Okay. I still have hopes for Link that it's going to come through in the clutch. I mean, maybe I've gotten a little bit too married to Link. I don't know, but it simply just has underperformed Ethereum for a while now. So we're looking to see that change. Again, it's also underperformed Bitcoin for a while now. So there's definitely a lot of things we would like to see change with the Link Bitcoin valuation, the Link Ether valuation, and whatnot. But at least Link USD still looks okay. And it's in fact bouncing again off of its own bull market support band. Okay, so Link looks good in the short term. So keep an eye on that one as well. And the stock market. Okay, let's talk about the stock market. Whenever it goes below 0.75 risk is a great time to DCA. I've said this before. And it went below 0.75 risk not that long ago, just a week or two ago. And I said, all right, look guys, I'm buying the dip. And you'll remember there are a lot of bears at these stages. Anytime you get a dip, that'll call for a long bear market for the stock market. The truth is they're usually wrong. Okay, they're usually wrong. I've been saying this forever. The longer you just experience the stock market, you'll see the same thing. Again, it's not rocket science, just data science. Just go look at the stock market chart. It generally trends up with time. And if you're going to consistently bet against the stock market, look how, I mean, you're just more often wrong than right. You're just more often wrong than right. This has been going on since 2009. If you zoom out even further, look at this chart. Yes, this was a pretty brutal bear market back in 01 and whatnot. This one wasn't that great either. Obviously, the recession, the financial crisis, but it still generally trends up with time. I think the stock market is a great place to just put money for the long haul. Okay, and what I do when I ever see the risk level go below 0.75. I DCA in, and I DCA in pretty heavily because, it doesn't make it below 0.75 that much. Okay, so just consider that. Recognize that just like Bitcoin, the S&P has also bounced off of its own bull market support band. The Dow Jones has bounced off its bull market support band and has already put in new highs. The dollar, right? The dollar, US dollar currency index, look at this. Rejection off the 100 week. This is exactly what we said we wanted to see for Bitcoin to do well. And the stock market. Rejection off the 100 week. Okay? This is what we want to see. And ideally, we'd like to see it keep coming back down. Look, if it ends up coming back up, then that's not going to be good for Bitcoin or the stock market. But if it keeps bleeding, it's going to be pretty good for Bitcoin and the stock market, more than likely. All right? So, we've covered a lot. Hopefully I answered a lot of people's questions. I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Again, leave a comment down below if you have any questions. I'll try to get to those. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you next time. Bye.